In this video I'm going to be carrying out a front brake service, and there has been some work done on these brakes in excess of 6 months ago, so we'll remove the wheel and see what we can find. Well, it does look like we've got some very nice meaty discs, and when I'm driving it, last year there were definitely room for improvement, but it has been laid up a few months, so these discs look as if they're pretty new, so I think we might just get away with a clean up. So we'll make a start removing this brake caliper here, and it is a 13mm socket, and if the slider pin's still spinning, a 17mm spanner will pinch the flat edges. Well, the bolt watch came out, looks brand new, and that makes it two relatively new bolts. So we want to remove the caliper, and the best way of doing it, we don't want to damage the pads as they could be good and we intend to reuse them. We need to lever against this disc. So I've got a lever and I'm going to put it in here, and then we're just going to gently apply some leverage to compress the caliper. We haven't gone too far, and we're just going to wiggle the caliper off. Do take care not to let your caliper drop, as it's quite a heavy component. I've got it lashed to the coil spring via a piece of wire in the absence of a bungee. As I'm going to be removing the brake disc, I'm going to take a 12mm spanner to these two nuts here, and it's a job I could have made easier for myself by leaving the caliper on, so we're going to wedge it with an old screwdriver just to hold everything in place. They came out very easily. Now on with the carrier removal. I'm basically going to need a 22mm socket to remove these two bolts, and you may have to apply quite a bit of force. So I do have a breaker bar, so with the breaker bar connected, we'll see how tough these are. So we'll just now back this out with a ratchet ×2. On the top one, you're going to need quite a slim ratchet or an extension. And then the carrier just drops out, and we can then remove the brake disc. There's quite a bit of surface corrosion on these discs, but generally speaking they look quite good to me. I think with a bit of effort we can salvage these parts, and the pads are incredibly meaty. So we've got to get these a lot cleaner. Now we can actually achieve reasonable results just rubbing with some sandpaper, but I prefer to use a twisted knot wire wheel in an angle grinder. If you don't have one of these, this wheel attachment for a drill will suffice, but it will take a little longer. So it's on with the safety specs, and I'm going to clean the worst area first. And that's absolutely shocking, and that's revealed some incredibly deep pitting, so I think replacement is the order of the day. Well, I've actually had the discs turned because they were so meaty, just seemed a shame to throw them away. Prior to refitting, I like to clean up the hub, and the twisted knot wire wheel is the weapon of choice. Do ensure that the corresponding surface, i.e. the inside of your brake disc, is nice and clean, as any dirt here will affect the run out. I do like to paste a film of copper ease around the circumference of the hub. This will keep away corrosion. It's a very thin film is all that's required. And I get it all over the surfaces that I've just cleaned. And then refit the disc. Now, one thing I have noticed is that these holes here, it tends to be the ones further away from the centre that you use. So that's that one and its corresponding friend. Any what are nearest the centre, dismiss them. And I always reassemble with anti-seize compound, as given long-term ownership I'm likely to be the next person to undo these bolts. Place the vehicle in gear and nip up these bolts. So now we'll turn our attention towards the carrier, and I just like to turn these and just check the seals are in order, and it'll redistribute any grease what's in there. If any are seized, you will have to get these nice and free. So we've got the carrier in a vise. If you don't have one, it's not the end of the world. And we're going to clean these surfaces here so that they're lovely and shiny, as brake dust and dirt can accrue in these surfaces and build up to the point where the pad is seized inside the caliper. But every pad should have a little bit of room to jiggle around. Clean what you can with a wire brush, but it may be necessary just to pass a file in these just to clean them up further and remove any stubborn rust. I do like to clean the pads up with a little sandpaper. Obviously, if you're renewing the pads, there's no need to bother. And do take the time to clean this side, as we want it to be bolted on the vehicle totally square. So give the pads a very light sanding, and now we need to clean the edges with a wire brush, and then I like to pass a file over each just to give it a really thorough clean, just like the one on the right. So what we've effectively done is maximised the jiggle room. There is in the region of a millimetre there, possibly a little less. So let's turn our attention towards the caliper. We're going to clean up these edges here, a bit of sandpaper, etc. If there's any residual dirt, you can remove it there. And we're going to clean up these areas here, as this is where it bolts onto the hanger, and we want that to be clean. As you can see, I've spent quite a bit of time de-rusting this. It is very important, as it's going to be pushing on the pad, and you can get a build up of rust here, so it won't push the pad square into the disc. So when I've finished, I just give it a thin smear of copper ease, and do take care not to damage this seal in any way whatsoever. I've actually used sandpaper and a file. Also check that the corresponding side where my thumb is clean, as that also can get rust build up, which alters the angle that the pad will press on the disc, so make sure that is clean. So it's now time to refit the carrier. I've gave all these areas a thin smear of copper ease, and also the respective 2 carrier bolts. It's essential that the carrier bolts are nice and tight, so I don't mind using a little extra leverage to achieve that. So we'll turn our attention back to the caliper. I just like to get a little bit of copper ease, very thin film, and put a bit on there, and go around the circumference of both of these pistons. You could use brake grease as an alternative. And now the pads. What I like to do, if there's any corrosion, just give it a light little sanding and get it nice and clean. And I just put a smear on the back and a bit on each edge. That should keep corrosion away for a little longer, and we'll insert it into the carrier. It's it is very important that you don't get any copperies on the friction surfaces of the disc or the pads. So we're keeping the brake hoses nice and straight, and we're going to reinsert the caliper. And another good copper easing on the bolts for the caliper. And nip up with a spanner. Do clean any residual grease off. Carburetor cleaner is really good at doing that, or alternatively just buff it up clean with a rag, wipe, etc. When refitting the wheel, do take a note of these. They're there to guide you. You'll not refit it unless you get them lined up. And remove whatever you used to hold the brake caliper in place. And before moving the vehicle, do check that your brake pedal is firm. Keep pumping it. Well, that's one side done, and now we have the corresponding side to do. We should always work on brakes evenly, i.e. what you do to one side you should do to the other. Many thanks for watching, and why not subscribe to learn of more repair possibilities.